Hello, friends. We're going to continue with the Tale of Despereaux. Chapter 36, What Mig Carries. And while the mouse slept, Roscaro put his terrible plan into effect. Would you like to hear, readers, how it all unfolded? The story is not a pretty one. There is violence in it and cruelty, but stories that are not pretty have a certain value too, I suppose. Everything, as you know, having lived in this world long enough to figure out a thing or two for yourself, cannot always be sweetness and light. Listen, this is how it happened. First, the rat finished once and for all the job he had started long ago. He chewed through Gregory's rope all the way through it, so that the jailer became lost in the maze of the dungeon. Late at night, when the castle was dark, the serving girl, Miggery Sow, climbed the stairs to the princess's room. In her hand, she carried a candle, and in the pocket of her apron were two very ominous things. In the right pocket, hidden in case they should encounter anyone on the stairs, was a rat with a spoon on top of his head and a cloak of red wrapped around his shoulders. And in the left pocket was a kitchen knife, the same kitchen knife that Miggery Sow had used to cut off the tail of a certain mouse. These were the things, a rat, a knife, and a candle, that Mig carried as she climbed her way up the stairs. "Gore!" she shouted at the rat. "It's dark, ain't it?" Yes, whispered Roscaro in her pocket. "It's quite dark, my dear." "When I'm a princess," Mig said. "Shh," said Roscaro. "May I suggest that you keep your glorious plans of the future to yourself? And may I further suggest that you keep your voice down to a whisper? We are, after all, on a covert mission. Do you know how to whisper, my dear?" "I do," shouted Mig. "Then please," said Roscaro, "please initiate this knowledge immediately." "Oh, all right." "Thank you," said Roscaro. "Do I need to review with you once again our plan of action?" "I got it all right up here in my head," whispered Mig as she tapped the side of her head with one finger. "How comforting," said Roscaro. "Perhaps, my dear, we should go over it one more time." "One more time, just to be sure." "Well," said Mig, "we go up to the princess's room, and she'll be sleeping and snoring and snoozing, and I will wake her up, and I'll show her the knife, and I'll say, 'If you don't want to get hurt, princess, you must come with me.'" "And you will not hurt her," said Roscaro. "No, I won't, because I want her to live, so she can be my lady-in-waiting, and I can be the princess." "Exactly," said Roscaro. "That will be her divine comeuppance." "Gore," whispered Mig. "Her divine comeuppance?" Mig, of course, had no clue what divine comeuppance meant. She very much did, though, like the sound of it, and repeated it over and over to herself, until Roscaro said, "And then," continued Mig, "I will tell her to get out of her princess's bed and come with me on a little journey." "Ha!" said Roscaro, "a little journey." "That's right." I love the understatement of that phrase. "A little journey. Oh, it will be a little journey indeed. Indeed it will." "And then," said Mig, who was now coming up to her favorite part of the plan, "I will take her to the deep downs, and we will give her some long lessons on how to be a serving girl, and me some short lessons on how to be a princess. And then when we're done all studying up, we'll switch places, and I gets to be the princess, and she gets to be the maid. Oh, gore!" Readers, now this is the very plan that Roscaro presented to Mig when he first met her. Of course, this was a ridiculous plan. No one would ever, not even for a blind minute, mistake Mig for a princess and the princess for Mig. But Miggery Sow, as I pointed to you out before, was not the sharpest knife in the drawer. And readers, too, she wanted desperately to become a princess. She wanted, oh, how she wanted. And it was because of this terrible wanting that she was able to believe in Roscaro's plan with every ounce of her heart. The rat's real plan was in a way more simple and just more terrible. He intended to take the princess into the deepest, darkest part of the dungeon. He intended to have Mig put chains on the princess's hands and feet, and he intended to keep the glowing, glittering, laughing princess there in the dark forever. Chapter 37, A Small Taste. She was asleep and dreaming of her mother, the queen, who was holding out a spoon to her and saying, "Taste this, my sweet pea. Taste this, my darling, and tell me what you think." The princess leaned forward and sipped some of the soup from the spoon her mother held out. "Oh, Mama," she said, "it is wonderful. It's the best soup I've ever eaten." "Yes," said the queen, "it is wonderful, isn't it?" "May I have some more?" asked Pea. "I will give you a small taste so that you will not forget, my dear. I will give you a small taste so you will remember." "I want more," said the pea. But as soon as the princess said this, her mother was gone. She disappeared, and the bowl and the soup spoon disappeared along with her. "Lost things," said Pea. "More lost things." And then she heard her name. She turned happily, thinking it was her mother that had come back, but the voice was not her mother's. The voice belonged to somebody else, and it came from a faraway place, and it was telling her to wake up, wake up. The pea opened her eyes and saw Miggery Sow standing over her bed with a knife in one hand and a candle in another. "Mig," she said. "Go," said Mig. "Say it," commanded Riscaro. Meg closed her eyes and shouted, If you don't want to get hurt, princess, you must come with me." "Whatever for?" said the princess in an annoyed tone. As I have noted also before, the princess was not a person who was used to being told what to do. "What are you talking about?" Mig opened her eyes and shouted, "You've got to come with me, so after we take some lessons, you some long ones and me some short ones together way in the deep downs, I can be you and you can be me." "No!" shouted Riscaro from Mig's pocket. "No, no, no, you've done it all wrong." "Who is that?" "Your Highness," said Riscaro. He crawled out of Mig's pocket and made his way up onto her shoulder and situated himself there, laying his tail across her neck to balance himself out. "Your Highness," he said again, and he raised the spoon slowly off his head and smiled, displaying a mouthful of truly hideous teeth. "I think that it would be best if you just do what Miggery Sow suggested. She is, as you can see quite clearly, in possession of a knife, a large knife, and she will use it if pushed." "This is ridiculous," said the princess. "You can't threaten me. I am the princess." "Well," said Riscaro, "we are all too aware of the fact of what you are. A knife, however, cares nothing of the fact that you are royalty. And you will bleed, I assume, just like any other human." The pea looked at Mig, and Mig smiled. The knife glittered in the light of the candle. "Mig," her voice was shaking just the teeniest bit. "I really don't think," said Riscaro, "that Mig would need too much persuasion to use the knife, princess. She is a dangerous individual, easily led." "But we are friends," said the pea. "Aren't we, Mig?" Said Mig. "Trust me," said Riscaro, "you are not friends, and I think it would be best if you address all your communications to me, princess. I am the one in charge here. Look at me." The princess looked directly at the rat and the spoon on his head. Her heart skipped one beat and then two. "You do know me, princess, don't you?" "No," the princess said, lowering her head. "I don't know you." But readers, she did know him. He was the rat who had fallen into her mother's soup. And he was wearing her dead mother's spoon on his head. The princess kept her head down. She concentrated on the rage that was leaping up inside her. Oh, look again, princess. Or does it pain your royal sensibilities to let your eyes rest upon a rat? I don't know you, said the princess, and I am not afraid to look at you. The pea raised her head slowly. Her eyes were defiant, and she stared at the rat. Here we are. It's hard to see with the crease in the book, but there Mig is, with the carving knife, Pea's head peeking out of her sheets on her pillow, and Roscaro right there on Mig's shoulder, staring at the princess. Very well, said Roscaro. Have it your way. You do not know me. Nonetheless, you must do as I say, as my friend here has a knife. So get out of bed, princess. We're going on a little journey. I would like it if you would dress in your loveliest gown, the one you were wearing not so long ago at the banquet. And put on your crown, said Mig. Put that on your princess's head. Yes, said Roscaro. Please, princess, don't forget your crown. The pea, still staring at Roscaro, pushed the covers back and got out of bed. More quickly, said Roscaro. We must take our little journey while it's still dark and while the rest of the castle is sleeping on, ignorant, oh so ignorant, I'm afraid, of your fate. The princess took a gown from her closet. Yes, Roscaro said. That's the one, the very one. Look how it sparkles in the light. Lovely. I will need someone to do my buttons, said the princess as she stepped into the dress. Mig, you must help me. Oh, princess, said Roscaro, do you think you can outsmart a rat? Our dear Miggery will not lay down her knife, not for a moment. Will you, Miggery? Because that might ruin your chances of becoming a princess. Isn't that right? Oh, that's right, said Mig. And while Mig held the knife pointed in the direction of the princess, the pea sat and let the rat crawl over her back, doing her buttons up for her one by one. The princess held very still. The only movement she allowed herself was this. She licked her lips over and over because she thought that she could taste there in the sweetness, the saltiness of the soup that her mother had fed her in her dream. I have not forgotten, Mama, she whispered. I have not forgotten you. I have not forgotten soup. Chapter 38, To the Dungeon. The strange threesome made their way down the golden stairs of the castle. The princess and Mig walked side by side, and Roscaro hid himself again in the pocket of Mig's apron. Mig pointed the sharp tip of the knife at the princess's back, and together they went down, down, down. The princess was led to her fate, as around her everyone slept. The king slept in his giant bed with his crown on his head and his hands across his chest, dreaming of his wife, the queen, as if she was a bird with green and gold feathers, who called his name, Philip, 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 without ceasing. Cook slept too, in a too small bed off of the kitchen, dreaming of a recipe of soup that she could not find. Oh, where did I put it? She mumbled in her sleep. Where did that recipe go? It was the queen's favorite. I must find it. And not far from Cook, in the pantry atop of a bag of flour, slept the mouse Despereaux, dreaming, as you already know, readers, of a knight in shining armor, of darkness and of light. And the whole of the darkness sleeping in the castle, there was only one light of a candle in the hand of Miggery. The candle shone on the princess's dress and made it sparkle, and the princess kept tall, walking and trying not to be afraid. In this story, readers, we have talked about the heart of the mouse, and the heart about the rat, and the heart about a serving girl named Miggery. But we have not yet talked about the heart of the princess. Like most hearts, It is complicated, shaded with dark and some with light. The dark things in the princess's heart were these: a very small, hot, burning coal of hatred for the rat who was responsible for her mother's death. And the other darkness was the tremendous sorrow, the deep sadness that her mother was dead, and the princess could now only talk to her in her dreams. And what of the light in the princess's heart? Readers, I am pleased to tell you that the pea was a kind person, and perhaps more importantly, an empathetic person. And do you know what it means to be empathetic? I will tell you, it means that when you are being forcefully taken to the dungeon, when you have a large knife pointed at your back, when you are trying to be brave, you are still able to think for a moment of the person who is holding that knife. You are able to think to yourself, oh, poor Mig, she wants to be a princess so desperately that she thinks this is the way. Poor Mig. What must it be like to want something that desperately? And readers, that is empathy. And now you have a small map of the princess's heart: hatred, sorrow, kindness, and empathy. The heart that she carried inside her as she went down the golden stairs and through the kitchen, and finally, just as the sky outside of the castle began to lighten, down into the dark of the dungeon with the rat and the serving girl. We'll stop here for today.